After the Civil War, the United States found itself in a period of reconstruction and redefinition. The country lay in ruins, yet at the same time, it was in an accelerated process of expansion westward. The newly colonized territory became a land of opportunity, but also a battleground without laws and without an effective governance system. Most cities were makeshift, and disputes over land, resources, and power were constant. The situation was chaotic with no solid infrastructure, where authorities were slow to arrive, and conflicts were often resolved through force or cunning. In this new territory, the lack of a structured legal system created a power vacuum. Power was contested between pioneers, farmers, traders, and often the criminals roaming the new lands. Tensions between different groups were intense, and violence seemed to be the only recourse for resolving disputes. However, this was an unsustainable situation. For the West to become a vital and controlled part of the nation, it was necessary to find a creative solution, a way to bring order to the chaos and allow the region to prosper peacefully and strategically. It was then that the Lincoln Law, a landmark legal measure of enormous impact, emerged as the key to a new future. This law, which aimed to regulate the distribution of land in the West, was an important step in organizing the region. With it, the federal government took the first step toward regulating the West, allowing for new institutions to emerge to control land distribution and the creation of new towns. What many did not know was that this law would not only organize the land but also serve as the starting point for something much bigger, the concept of the chess office, a strategic idea that would arise to resolve conflicts and disputes in an intelligent and effective manner. What happened in the years that followed was a true revolution in governance and conflict resolution. Inspired by the logic and intelligence of the game of chess, those in charge of implementing the Lincoln Law began applying strategies that went beyond the simple act of distributing land or collecting taxes. They created a structure where every move had to be calculated. Every decision needed to be strategically planned to ensure long-term victory. It was the birth of a system that, although innovative, would become known as the first chess office of the West, a symbol of intelligence and strategic thinking that unknowingly was creating a legacy for history. The Lincoln Law, enacted in 1862, had a transformative impact on the American West, marking the beginning of a new chapter in United States history. Its goal was to ensure the fair distribution of land to pioneers by offering the chance to claim 160 acres, provided they committed to cultivating it for 5 years. This measure was crucial in attracting immigrants and citizens from the East in search of a new life, while also helping to expand the country's frontiers. What seemed like a simple agrarian reform measure would evolve into one of the foundations for territorial control, and, later, the development of an innovative legal system that would resolve conflicts strategically by establishing a formal method of land acquisition. The Lincoln Law brought with it the need for stringent regulations on how lands would be claimed, documented, and disputed. Before its implementation, the West was a lawless land where territorial disputes were settled by force or bribery, and communication between the parties involved was limited. However, with the arrival of the law, new legal and administrative institutions began to emerge to organize this new reality. The law not only promoted land distribution but also required a governance structure to address legal matters, increasing the complexity of the process and the need for a more strategic and intellectual approach. The true innovation, however, came with the adaptation of the legal system of the West to the logic of chess. Inspired by the need for meticulous planning, the first authorities began to apply the strategic thinking of chess in legal disputes. Every move and every decision had to be carefully calculated, with the awareness that any mistake could result in irreversible consequences. The use of chess as a metaphor for legal strategies began to gain momentum, leading to the creation of a system where lawyers and authorities acted as players, positioning their pieces or arguments in a way that would ensure future victories. As the Lincoln Law began to show its results, there arose a need for a new form of mediation and conflict resolution that went beyond the simple court system. It was in this environment that the idea of the chess office was forged, symbolizing a combination of logical strategy, diplomacy, and legality. It was no longer just about territorial disputes, but also about the political and social relationships that arose among the various factions that made up the West. This office not only resolved land issues but shaped the future of the region by applying the calculated reasoning of chess to ensure order and long-term prosperity. In the post-Civil War chaos, the American West was not only a land of opportunity, it was also a land of disorder and unpredictability. The lack of adequate infrastructure and a consolidated governance system created an environment where anyone could make decisions and act without much consequence. In this scenario, the need for a strategic game became evident. Disputes over land, scarcity of resources, and the challenges of establishing a functional society required not only brute force, but also a strategic mind, capable of visualizing the future and anticipating the moves of others. In this context, the metaphor of chess began to gain relevance. In the game of chess, every move must be carefully planned, considering future repercussions. The idea of using chess's strategic reasoning to resolve conflicts in the West began to emerge as pioneers, and legal authorities realized that it was no longer enough to resolve disputes by force or simple negotiation. The West required a more intelligent and meticulous approach, where every move in matters of land and power was thought through in advance, ensuring that decisions would yield the best possible outcome. As the first chess offices began to emerge, lawyers and local leaders started to behave like chess players, evaluating the best ways to advance in land and resource disputes. Every move, from choosing allies to setting a legal strategy, was carefully calculated. The ability to anticipate the actions of others and manipulate the game in their favor became crucial for success. The chess game was no longer just a pastime, but a strategic necessity to ensure the West would be pacified and that rules would be effectively established. Over time, the chess office became more than just a solution for land disputes. It became a symbol of the new West, a place where intelligence and strategy prevailed over violence. The simple act of moving a piece on the chessboard came to reflect the need for calculated actions in all aspects of life in the West, from commercial negotiations to political and military disputes. And it was in this setting that the idea was solidified that, to thrive in the West, one needed more than just courage. one needed to think like a strategist. The idea of a chess office did not emerge from nowhere. It was a direct response to the strategic needs of the West. As the population grew and land disputes intensified, the Old West needed more than just simple land swaps or informal agreements. There was a clear demand for a system that could not only mediate but also anticipate conflicts, allowing decisions to be made based on intelligent, long-term logic, much like the game of chess. This is when the concept of the chess office emerged, a space where every action and move was planned with care and strategy. The first chess office arose as a solution to manage legal and territorial issues effectively. As the Lincoln Law was implemented, pioneers began to realize that land disputes could no longer be resolved merely through direct confrontations or by force. A more structured system was needed that could bring to light the complex political and social relationships of the West, where wrong decisions could lead to devastating consequences. The concept of the chess office was the answer to this challenge, where lawyers and administrators began to see themselves as chess players, moving their pieces in a calculated and strategic manner. This new office was not limited to resolving land disputes, but expanded into more complex matters such as political rivalries, conflicts of interest between powerful business groups, and even legal manipulations occurring behind the scenes. Rather than adopting a reactive approach like many other legal instances of the time, the chess office proactively anticipated problems and made decisions, like a player preparing for checkmate. It was without a doubt the precursor to a more organized legal system where strategic skill and foresight became crucial for success. Over time, the chess office solidified itself as a true institution. It not only organized and resolved land disputes, but also began to shape the power dynamics of the region. The strategic mindset it promoted infiltrated all spheres of society: politics, business, and personal relations. The decisions made in the chess office profoundly impacted the development of the West, as they were based on logic, strategy, and anticipation, rather than simple physical confrontations or impulsive negotiations. This innovative concept would continue to influence the West for many years, serving as a model for the development of more sophisticated legal structures across the country. The game of chess in the West was not limited to land disputes, but extended to the fight for power, influence, and control over the region's resources. In a lawless territory, alliances and betrayals were common, and every move needed to be more than a simple reaction to circumstances. It was necessary to plan moves in advance, both in relation to enemies and allies, and understand that a decision made today could change the course of the entire history of the region. The West was, in a way, a large-scale chessboard, where each move reflected the desire to control the destiny of that vast and relentless land. Just as in the game of chess, where the position of the pieces is crucial to control the board. In the West, political and economic alliances became decisive. Farmers and businessmen were not merely fighting over land. They were strategically positioning themselves to control trade routes, natural resources, and even the workforce, using their positions as leverage to guarantee their supremacy. The chess game in the West was at the heart of these disputes, where every move required a careful evaluation of long-term consequences. The clash of interests between the various groups, from the most powerful to the small pioneers, required a strategic mindset and the ability to predict the moves of others. Over the years, the chess office began to influence the political disputes of the West even more. The concept of chess game was absorbed by political and business leaders who began to think in terms of moves and counter-moves, seeking the advantage and anticipating the actions of their opponents. It was a game where every decision, whether in politics, business, or power relations, needed to be meticulously calculated. Those who could think several steps ahead and anticipate their opponent's actions were the most successful. Chess thus became not just a legal tool, but also a strategic philosophy that permeated every aspect of life in the West. This new game of power and strategy was not limited to land disputes, but extended to the formation of a new social order. The manipulation of laws and administrative processes, the negotiation of agreements, and even the use of force, always in a strategic manner, became the norm. The most skilled leaders were those who could set up a board where their pieces, their allies, businesses, and territories were positioned advantageously to guarantee their future supremacy. Every move was an opportunity to expand their domain or weaken their enemies. It was the birth of a new kind of leadership, one where strategic thinking became the greatest asset. With the emergence of the chess office and the implementation of such an innovative strategy, it didn't take long for challenges and opposition to arise. The West was a region marked by a diversity of interests, and not everyone viewed the creation of such a structured and calculated system favorably. For many, the change represented a threat to the way they had always resolved disputes, through force, direct negotiation, or even informal agreements. The introduction of a more complex and strategic structure was, for some, a sign that the freedom to solve problems independently was being restricted. Resistance to this new order came from both powerful groups who feared losing control over their advantages, and from pioneers who saw the system as an obstacle to their freedom. Opposition also manifested in the way local and regional authorities began reacting to the growing power and influence of the chess office. Many political and military leaders of the West, accustomed to making quick decisions often based on personal interests, resisted a system that required deep reflection, anticipation, and patience. They were used to fast and decisive moves, characteristics that contrasted with the meticulous and strategic nature of the chess game. To them, the introduction of a more complex legal process seemed like a way to paralyze decisions and create bureaucracy that only delayed the execution of necessary actions. This resistance, however, did not prevent the concept from gaining strength, but highlighted the tensions between innovation and tradition, between the new and the old governance system, the lack of uniformity, and the different regional interests also made it difficult to implement the system. The West was not a homogeneous region, and conditions varied from town to town, state to state. While some areas embraced the idea of a more organized and strategic system, others saw it as a threat to their local autonomy. The concept of a centralized chess office seemed out of place in a land where individual independence and the freedom to act were highly valued. Therefore, resistance also came from the very nature of the West, which had been formed based on a culture of disobedience and a lack of centralized control. However, the advantages of a structured system began to show their power as order was established and disputes were resolved more efficiently and less violently. Despite the obstacles and opposition, the chess office began to demonstrate its effectiveness. Disputes, once resolved by force or personal agreements, were replaced by a more organized and intelligent system. The strategic mindset began to gain ground, and over time, those who opposed the change began to see the benefits of the new system. Gradually, the chess game became part of Western culture, not only as a legal tool, but also as a philosophy of life that valued intelligence, anticipation, and planning. The system, despite the initial challenges, solidified as the foundation for a new type of governance that in the end helped pacify and stabilize one of the most chaotic regions in American history. As time passed and the West developed, the impact of the Lincoln Law and the concept of the chess office became increasingly evident. What began as a solution to resolve territorial disputes and bring order to the region transformed into a governance model that would influence not only the West, but the entire country. The idea of applying chess strategies to political, legal, and social issues was a milestone in the history of public and private organization in the United States. The chess game, with its tactics of anticipation, calculated moves, and long-term planning, infiltrated various areas of American life, from the federal government to small towns and large corporations. The most significant legacy of this strategic approach was the creation of a long-term mindset, where actions were evaluated based on their future consequences. The logic of chess, thinking several steps ahead and evaluating all possibilities before acting, became a philosophy applied to politics and public administration. The idea that the West could be more than a wild, lawless land, but rather an organized and strategic region, solidified with the implementation of this vision. Gradually, the concept of the chess office spread, adapted in different ways and models, but always with the same essence: governance based on calculation and intelligence. From the moment the chess office demonstrated its effectiveness, it became a reference for the creation of new legal and administrative systems, not only in the West, but in other parts of the country. The model of decision-making based on chess began to be adopted by business leaders, politicians, and even military leaders. This legacy deeply impacted how the United States would organize itself in the future, especially as the country expanded into other territories and faced new internal and external challenges. The chess game became, then, a metaphor for how the country would face its own evolution, with strategy, anticipation, and long-term vision. Furthermore, the influence of the Lincoln Law and the chess office extended beyond the United States borders, reaching other countries that saw the West's governance model as an inspiration for resolving territorial conflicts and organizing their own laws. The concept of strategic governance, where every decision was thought of in long-term terms, sowed the foundations for what would become a model of public administration that could be adopted in various parts of the world. The chess game, as both a metaphor and a practice, became a powerful representation of strategic intelligence in conflict resolution and building a more ordered future. Looking at the history of the American West, we see much more than a vast and lawless territory where physical strength and survival of the fittest seemed to be the only options. The legacy of the Lincoln Law and the first chess office teaches you a profound lesson about the power of strategy, anticipation, and intelligent planning. In an era marked by brutality, where destinies were decided by speed and strength, an innovative vision emerged, a strategy that was thoughtful, calculated, and had long-term vision. The game of chess, which initially seemed like a distant metaphor for politics and territorial disputes, became the key to transforming the West into a more organized and efficient region. The true transformation of the West didn't happen just with the occupation of land or the arrival of new settlers, but with the adoption of a strategic mindset where every move was made with the purpose of ensuring a more prosperous and peaceful future. The pioneers and authorities who managed to think strategically, like a chess player, were the ones who stood out the most. They not only resolved disputes, but transformed a chaotic place into a model of governance that could be applied to other parts of the country. Chess, more than a game, became a reflection of what is necessary to succeed in times of uncertainty. Intelligence, patience, and above all, strategic vision. The history of the chess office in the West is a powerful reminder that strategy is not only for wars or major conflicts, but also for the small and large decisions of everyday life. In a world where speed and strength are often the most obvious answers, the real power lies in being able to visualize the future and anticipate challenges. The game of chess, with its pieces and calculated moves, represents the essence of what it means to be strategic, not just reacting to the present, but shaping the future with every move made. This legacy, born in the West, transcends the boundaries of time and space, influencing how leaders and individuals in all areas can act with more intelligence and precision. And as we reflect on the impact of this chess game, we can conclude that even in a chaotic and unpredictable world, the key to achieving great victories lies not in being the strongest or the fastest, but in being the most strategic. In the end, the West was not only tamed by physical strength, but by the ability to think, plan, and play the game intelligently, ensuring order where there was once only chaos. The legacy of the Lincoln Law and the chess office is a testament to the fact that true victory comes from those who know that the future is not just a battleground, but a chessboard where every move counts.